Good day, everybody. This is John Scarborough. I wanted to touch on a little subject today. I had a couple questions about it, and I used to be curious about it myself before I got into working with green wood. And the question was, can you build with green lumber? Can you build with it without it warping and moving around on you? And so I just kind of wanted to sort of answer that question, but really let you answer your question and let you answer the question and be your own judge. I wanted to show you all this little shelf that we built here. We actually built this shelf for all of our different stuff, oil and things like that, all of our oil filters and things that we use in the tractors and stuff like that. And I just wanted to show y'all just a little bit here, because this was built, some of it was built with some wood that was actually harvested. All three of these shelves right here, this wood was actually harvested from a house that we had tore down years and years ago. And so the house was built in the 70s. Well, it may have even been the 50s. I don't remember. Anyway, it was a long time. It was several decades old. So it was really good and dry lumber, okay? And then this right here, this big piece, this was actually purchased about 2 years ago, back when we had poured the piers to put these containers in. Back when we put the containers, I'm going to step right out here and just show you, we put these containers in. We actually poured these piers right here. And this was back before lumber got really high. But when we poured that, we had actually purchased those 2x12s to pour those piers. So it wasn't quite as old, and it's not treated. We did not use treated for it. And then this right here, this was green lumber right here. This was milled lumber. You can tell it's not even as thick. This is a 2x, well, it's something close to a 2x4. This right here was an actual 2x4. You can hear the dryness of it. And this right here was cut on the sawmill. And it's fairly dry now. That's all of that coming down there. That's all those braces that were put in right there on that side. Those are all actually cut on the sawmill all the way down. And then these right here all the way up, those were that was bought from a big box store. You can hear it right there. I don't even remember exactly which lumber supply I bought it from, but I had bought it from there. And to me, I can't tell any real difference in what's holding up any better. So what I wanted to say here is, when you use fresh green lumber, like completely green, it was just milled, then you'll see a lot of shrinking and stuff like that. This wood right here was actually dried for, I think, maybe a month at the most. And you know, there's just a lot of people, they'll see it online. It says that, you know, wood needs to dry for about a year an inch. And that's true. You know, that if you're going to dry it outdoors, it needs to dry it to about a year per inch. But the thing is wood dries to its relative humidity, okay? Well, this is exposed to outdoors here, all right? So if you wanted to dry this pine to where you could take it inside your house to a climate-controlled house, that a climate-controlled house actually pulls the humidity out, pulls the moisture out of the house. So it's fairly dry inside your house. But out here, this is exposed to regular humidity. I mean, I don't know if you can tell it looking at my arm, but I mean, I'm already sweating pretty good just being out here. Just being out in this shop. If I don't have a fan on, it can get somewhat uncomfortable. I'm already getting a little bit uncomfortable since I don't have a fan on. So the point is that I'm trying to make is, a lot of times if you're using lumber outdoors, like if you're building, I got a little chicken tractor that I built. It's just sitting right outside that door over there. Got a little chicken tractor I built. And I've also got just several different projects on the farm and even inside your shop that you can use. You can cut this wood on the sawmill, let it dry for, I mean, like I said, I let this dry for just a month. And it wasn't fully dry. It's drier now than it was, but it's fairly stable. It was stable enough. Like you can see a little bit of a crack there, but it's tight. I mean, that's in there. It's not going anywhere. That's plenty tight. So to the question, can you build with sawmilled lumber? Can you build with green lumber? Like, that's the real question. I would say you can. It depends on what it is you're trying to do. I mean, like, you can tell there, when I built this, I actually flushed these up. So we've retracted just a little bit there. It's not exactly the way it was before, but it's structurally solid. This shelf's not going anywhere. This shelf has been built now for a while throughout this whole summer, and we've actually had the driest summer that we've ever had. I've got several videos talking about how dry this summer has been. We've been in a drought here. Now, we did finally get a little rain here recently, so I'm really happy about that. We could sure use some more, but we did get a little, and I'm very happy. But the point is that it's been dry and hot enough, and then I keep air circulating through here when I'm working, that's had plenty of time to dry out more than it has. But the reason it's fairly stable is because the wood does not have to dry out nearly as much when you're using it outside. Our humidity here, I mean, a lot of times we never hardly drop below 60% humidity here. A lot of times we're looking at more like 80% humidity for a lot. I mean, it is very humid here, and there's a good many days that we're looking at closer to 100%. Now, it's not always, you know, that's obviously not. That's usually when it's raining. But my point is when we get, you know, it is always very, very high humidity here all the time. So for us to be able to use this lumber, it doesn't take very long to get it down to a good dry state, dry enough to its relative humidity. And because that wood right there is actually not going to get any more, it's not going to dry out anymore. It doesn't have to dry out much more. Now, any wood that you have exposed to the elements is always going to shrink and grow a little bit because it is exposed. The humidity is going to go up and down. But that's going to be the case even with sawmilled lumber, you know. The best, if you want to get past that, you need to use treated lumber. But usually I find that if you're inside of a shop, you're not, you know, it's not getting continually rained on, you're fine. So to answer the question, I think in a lot of cases you definitely can. It just depends on what your humidity is there. But I mean, if you're building outdoors or if you're building in your shop, I think you definitely can. And then in other cases, you can build, we've actually done a lot of this remodeling in other houses. We've helped other people like my in-laws and stuff, and go in there and you put green siding and stuff on the inside, green wood siding in there, let it shrink a little bit and you know, shrink to the house. and you don't just over nail it. That's one thing. You let it shrink a little bit to the house, you know, let it acclimate, and then you go in there and trim out, you know, a month or so later. And that's another way you can do it. I wouldn't do that if it's indoors or something. I wouldn't do it with any structural lumber. You know, I definitely wouldn't build a load-bearing wall without making sure you've got some good dry lumber or something like that. But there's a lot of different ways that you can definitely do it. But definitely anytime you're doing outdoor projects or building like these chicken tractors here, this is just an egg-laying chicken we've got running around right now. But these chicken tractors are actually for meat chickens. And, I mean, we built this out of freshly green lumber. I mean, it was cut that day, and we built that for that. And, I mean, would it be a little bit better if it was a little drier? Maybe so, in some cases. You know, I mean, you can tell it's got a little warp there and things like that. But honestly, it's not that bad. And it's because it's always getting rained on. It's wet outside anyway, you know. So, I mean, if you're interested in watching that video, we got a full video of what we did. We built that chicken tractor out of green lumber. And, I mean, it went together pretty good. There's a few places here and there that moved. Now, one thing I would do differently is I would build my door out of dry lumber. That is one thing, that's one problem I had. And I say that, I want to go back to this chicken tractor real quick. If I build one of these again, I'm going to make sure I use dry lumber. I've got dry lumber now. When I first built this, I was just getting started on my sawmill, and I just didn't have any dry lumber. So that's the reason I did that. So if you've got any lumber that's just a little bit drier, it's been sitting there for a month or two, you know. I've got some stuff that's been sitting there for 4 or 5 months now, and I'm fine building with that. That's plenty dry enough to build one of these and not move very much. So I would suggest if you're getting ready to build a door or something like that, I would definitely, because that door moved just enough that it doesn't open and close quite the way we want it to. But other than that, man, everything worked great. But for, you know, certain things, especially stuff you don't have to worry about moving too much, I mean, I would absolutely consider doing it. But the main thing is just let it, if you're doing it outside, just let it dry for a month or so. Let it dry for a month or so, and honestly, it's a very stable lumber for building in anywhere that's not indoors in a very, very dry climate. So anyway, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.